correctly and it's actually on. So if that's the case, then we're off and rolling. It is truly an honor to get to visit with you this afternoon. Let me begin by offering a heartfelt thank you. As a lifelong resident of Oak Ridge, the work of the lab, I'm familiar with it as much as you can be and not be a part of the lab as former principal of the high school. And I just want to say thank you for the important work that each of you do each day. The things that you do that make our country a better place to live and actually make the world better. And so thank you for your service. Mentoring actually follows the theme of service. A mentor is considered a trusted counselor or a guide. And mentors, you will be serving your protégés. That's the gist of mentoring. If you really want to boil it down, so much of it is the service from the mentor to the protégé. Part of that service at the lab will be helping to raise up the next generation of exceptional leaders and difference makers. Passing on the culture of the lab, passing on the excellence that has been established at Oak Ridge National Lab. So what does this mentoring, this act of service, what does that look like? Well, as Lauren said, I've had the good fortune to mentor a number of people, and a little bit just by wiring, I'm wired as a coaching leader, I'm wired to mentor. I get as much satisfaction out of someone who I've invested in reaching their goals and accomplishing what their dreams are as I do my own. Part of my wiring is just wired to coach and wired to mentor. And so for a number of years, primarily professionally, I have served as a mentor, and I can tell you that each one of my mentoring relationships has been unique. They've all been different. Even though at times I started out with the same program, the same format, the same goal, the same idea, they were all unique. And what makes a mentoring partnership unique are the two people involved in it. Because even though you've got a great program, and I've looked at the material, the layout of your program, the 9-month program, is truly exceptional. It's an outstanding design. But no two mentoring partnerships will be exactly the same because the people involved make the partnership in mentoring. It's very much unique to the two people because the two people involved have different backgrounds, different areas of expertise, different strengths, different personalities, and even different amounts of available time to invest in this partnership. And so while today you're basically starting at the same point, very soon, if not already, each one of these relationships, these partnerships will be a bit different. And I think that's a great part of mentoring in that as you go through the years and the baton is passed and the protege becomes the mentor in the future, what your experience is this time may be totally different the next time you're involved in a mentoring partnership. My guess would be that some of these partnerships will last the 9 months that the program is set, and others will go on informally for years. That's typically the way it goes. I've had mentoring relationships that were fairly formal, and they went the prescribed amount, and then there was very little contact afterwards, and I've had other mentoring relationships that I'm still close to those people today and still a part of their professional journey today. And so I just say that as you approach this journey, it will be unique for each of you. No two mentoring pairs will be the same. Mentors, if you'd raise your hand so I can see, who are the mentors in the group? All right, very good. Let me ask you a question. How many of you can look back at some point in your professional journey, in your career, and say that you were influenced by someone who helped you attain some level of professional success? You've been influenced by someone professionally. How many of you would that be? It looks like everyone raised their hand. And I would say the same. In fact, I would dare say that almost without exception, everyone who achieves a level of professional success has had someone who invested in them to some degree. Almost without exception. I don't personally know the exception, but I'll leave that caveat in there. So, as you think of your mentors, I'll tell you a little bit about a couple of mine. I've had really some outstanding mentors who invested in me. Now, let's for a moment realize that we can learn from people as we go in our professional journeys, but they're not our mentors. We can learn from someone, and what I would describe as the difference would be a mentoring relationship is intentional and it's ongoing. See, I could learn something from someone today, but it's not through a mentoring relationship. It's just through an opportunity in life to learn. We're always learning. I have a 16-year-old son. I have two children, 16 and 13. And my 16-year-old son, for some reason, really enjoys America's Funniest Home Videos. How many of you have seen that show? Okay, well then you can probably appreciate this. I don't know why he loves it like he does, but he does enjoy it. I think it's part of some of the foolish things people do that makes him laugh. But I have learned from America's Funniest Home Videos, never do anything that involves your children's trampoline and you jumping off of the second floor deck. Just don't do it. Just don't do that. Now, they're not my mentors, but I learn from them. And so we're always learning. But a mentoring relationship is intentional and it's ongoing. Let me tell you about a couple of my mentors. As Lauren said, the bulk of my career has been in education. I started as a teacher at Tyson Middle School that's just off the Cumberland Strip over near UT when I was 21. I was as much of a rookie as you could be. It was the only year of middle school I taught. I moved to high school after that and stayed in high school. But there was a teacher, I taught science, and there was a math teacher who just took an interest in me. We didn't have a formal mentoring program. But this math teacher, who taught fairly near me in the building, took an interest in me, and her name was Millie Moore. Millie was a veteran teacher, kind of crusty, and you know, she'd been through the wars and had lived to tell about it. And here I was, 21, fresh out of student teaching. One of the things you quickly realize is you didn't learn all that you need to know in student teaching. Okay, it didn't take me long to pick up on that. One of the first things, Millie taught me a ton. She taught me a ton about being a good teacher. And even though my aspiration wasn't to stay in middle school, she taught me in that 1 year to appreciate that really difficult stretch of moving from adolescence, from your elementary experience and before high school, and the difficulties that those kids are experiencing. But Millie taught me some lessons that, you know, are beyond what you would get in your coursework. One day I had a student who had asked to leave the room and go to the restroom. And I was a new teacher and full of authority, and I began to question that student. And in just a minute, she threw up on my arm. And so as I was telling Millie about the story later, she said, "Chuck, anytime a student tells you they're ill, don't have a conversation with them, usher them out of the room." And so from that point on, that was the only time that happened to me in my career. And I've always thought many times, students would come to me and say, even as I was a principal, "Mr. Carringer, I don't feel well." And man, I would go back to Millie and say, "Millie said, move them away from you as quick as you can." And so I would help that child find somewhere else to go because I'd already experienced that one time and that was enough. Another mentor of mine was Ken Green. Ken is currently the assistant superintendent in the Oak Ridge schools. And Ken is the person who is responsible for me making the transition from a classroom teacher and a coach to administration. Ken saw in me the potential to someday lead a high school. That really wasn't my aspiration at that time. I was loving the impact I was having with students, being in the classroom every day and coaching. I was passionate about it, but Ken was convincing, he was compelling, and he said, "Chuck, you'd be an outstanding principal." And so I made the move to administration, and Ken for 4 years was my mentor. He taught me the nuances not only of being an instructional leader, and moving from being a good teacher in your own right in one classroom, but to being an instructional leader and having the scope of the entire school And I was a science teacher. And so the ability to understand the other subject areas and the personnel side of leadership and all of those things that I had no clue about. And Ken was so kind to let me walk close to him. That was such a key. Ken was so kind, and he was very intentional. He was so kind to let me walk close to him. And mentors, I will share with you a key is the why, not just the how. The why we do things, not just how to do things. And Ken was so gracious to teach me the why, the reason behind the strategy. What was the philosophy that drove the reason we did that? No doubt I've had, much like yourself, have had some mentors that played a profound role in my professional life. Both Ken and Millie not only offered encouragement, but constructive criticism when it was warranted. But I knew both believed in me fully. Let's go back just a minute to Millie. And I really want you to catch this part. Let's just examine my relationship with Millie for a moment. Millie had no positional authority over me. Ken was my boss. He was the principal. I was an assistant principal. Millie and I were peers. Well, she was a veteran. I was a rookie. But nonetheless, organizationally, if we would have looked at a chart, Millie had no positional authority over me. So why was she able to lead me? Why was she able to influence me and have no positional authority? Because I trusted her. And I trusted her because of three things. I trusted her because she proved she was competent. She knew what she was talking about. She was a strong teacher, and I could tell she understood teaching. She was competent. I also trusted her because of her character. If she said, Chuck, I'm going to meet you tomorrow at 3, she was there. If she said, Chuck, I need you to do this, or I'll do that, her word was gold. She had strong character. And the third thing that enabled her to lead me without positional authority was that I knew she genuinely was concerned about me or cared about me. And so as you think, and this is like gold that I'm giving right here. This is a huge nugget of gold. Okay, if you've not heard anything else, grab a hold of this. You can lead very well without positional authority. In fact, I would tell you that positional authority is the lowest level of leadership. If the only way we're able to influence those we lead is through the organizational chart because they report to me, that is the lowest level of leadership, and what you get is the minimum. If the only reason someone follows you, or the only reason you have influence with someone is because you have positional authority, that is the lowest level of leadership, and they will do the minimum. However, if you have their trust, and that trust in a professional setting is generally attributed to those three factors, all starting with a C, and easy for us to remember. Am I competent in my work? Am I competent in the task at hand? Do I demonstrate character that they can count on me? And do I demonstrate a genuine concern for them and their professional success? Competency, character, and concern. And any of us can lead and increase our influence. And the great part of that is, if your desire, and there's nothing wrong with this, it was my desire to advance. Had I stayed in education, I would have aspired to likely be a superintendent. There's nothing wrong with that. My experience has been that positions follow influence, not vice versa. Influence shouldn't come from positions. Positions follow influence. As we become more influential, as we become better leaders, and we have influence, and people know that they can trust us because we're competent, and we have character, and we have concern, we will increase our influence and be better leaders.